Hello. So it's Sunday. I'm CJ. This week we're talking about gun control. So I'm English. I don't know if you know that. I don't know if you've picked up on that. When I was a kid, a man walked into the primary school in Scotland and shot the kids. That was called the Dunblane Massacre. The fact that that happened changed so many of the gun laws in the UK. It became virtually impossible to have a gun for any reason that wasn't hunting. So the having of a gun is something that I only know in a very structured kind of environment. My dad's a hunter, and so I've always been around somebody who shoots, and always been around somebody who has a gun for a purpose. It's a rifle, he takes it hunting, and it'd be a case of, he'd hunt the food that we'd eat. And I don't mean that in that sort of like hunter-gatherer. Well, I suppose it was. I suppose it's a city boys way of doing the hunter-gatherer thing, which like, sure, if you're into that, then that's cool. So for me, that's what having a gun is. Except for the fact that I live in the world. And when we talk about guns and we talk about gun control, we are unavoidably talking about the United States of America. That's where things get so messed up. And that's where I stop understanding, because I don't understand how America works. Now, I'm not one of those English people who is super like, oh my God, America. Like, I love America. I'm obsessed with America. I have had partners who are from America. I have spent a lot of time in the States. There are so many things about America that I think is beautiful. Guns will never be anywhere on that list. I don't understand how you can be a country that has the record that it has for shooting and not have everybody going, let's license this, let's make sure that people can't just have a gun. Because you license people in cars, and the weird thing about that is that a car does something else. Like, a car can kill somebody. As somebody who's been hit by a car, can't recommend it. Wouldn't do it if I was you. But you don't have a car to kill somebody. You have a car to drive places. But you still got to be licensed for it. And you still got to be a certain age. You still got to have a certain physical requirement, like you have to be able to see. A gun, on the other hand, doesn't serve another purpose. I guess that's where the hunter analogy for me really comes in. Because if you are a hunter and you have a gun, you are intending to kill something, but you're intending to kill an animal. If you have a revolver or a handgun, what are you intending to kill? The question of a target is something that has to necessarily come into the question of a gun. You don't have a gun unless you have a target. And I think maybe because I feel really strongly that trans people, we are a target. We're such a fucking target. We're a target for everybody at the moment. And if you don't believe me, go to your next Trans Day of Remembrance event and sit and listen to those 300, 400 names. Listen to the names, listen to the ages, and listen to how those people were killed. And then tell me that trans people don't have a target on us. And carrying a gun isn't going to do anything to stop that. Carrying a weapon isn't. I to a certain extent, I suppose, for all I get it. I get being so angry it's hard to cope. But are you so angry that you could shoot somebody? Because that's what it has to come down. If you're holding the gun, and are you going to be okay if a child gets hold of your gun? Because, this is the thing about it. If you look at it and go, oh, that will never happen. Yeah, that does happen. It happens frequently. The number of times that it's happened this year is already too fucking many. And there is this childlike attitude that comes from the fact, I suppose, that the people who make the guns, the people that make the killing machines, give a fuck ton of money to the people that make policy and the people that make the rules. And I got nothing but actual, like, what the fuck? So I don't understand how having a gun can be in any way defensive, because it isn't. It escalates situations. It was really interesting when I read that actually what makes people more likely to assume that something is a gun is because they're holding a gun, and that escalates the situation. And it escalates a situation that can only end terribly. I guess the thing that really gets me, and where I really think that a gun is a trans issue, is not in the having of a gun, but in the necessity to have a serious conversation about how people look at guns and how they look at people. The sort of narrow heteronormative experience of a lot of American lawmakers seems to massively be hinged on, if it doesn't look like me, make it carry an identification card. That exists. But I want to have a gun make me carry an identification card doesn't exist. And I don't understand why these are poles apart, and why one, which is about can people live, is well, we must license that. We must make people pass tests. We must absolutely limit somebody's identity, versus I should be allowed to carry something that can kill somebody, and I should just be allowed to do that because I want to. And that, for me, is the crux of the issue. That's where this becomes a real fucking trans issue, because that, my friends, is utter and complete bullshit. We've all seen these bathroom bills come in, and the biggest biggest cry that people can come out with is think of the children. Like, think of the children who might have a moment of concern about the gender identity of the person standing next to them washing their hands, because let's be real about this, that's the only time that you interact with someone in a bathroom is when you're standing next to them, or if you've run out of toilet paper and you're like, excuse me, can I have some toilet paper? They're the only times that anybody should talk to anybody in a bathroom. Like, I'm not into this whole, like, chatting while you pee deal. But there are states where they would rather teach more people what to do in the event of a gunman coming into the school than license the having of guns. The hypocrisy in that, the double standard in that, the rampant transphobia in that, the absolute what the fuck in that is more than I have words to express. Because in the end, if you want to think about the children, then think about the fact that children and small people and anybody has the right to just live and exist without fear of being murdered. And like, that's it. You know, when we talk about shootings, I feel like shootings really sanitizes it. Shootings kill people and people are murdered. And they are murdered in ways that are preventable. Why do you want to carry a gun in the... Like, what? I don't know what the point of carrying a death weapon is. Like a death machine. Let's call it a death machine. It's a fucking death machine. Why do you want to carry a death... What do you think carrying a death machine is going to do? And I guess to get really political into this point, we've seen how people deal with guns and race, which is to say, not very fucking well. And we've seen how people deal with issues of gender, also not very fucking well. If it comes down to a trans person and they think that that trans person is carrying a gun, I don't believe they won't try and kill us. I don't. And I think it gives an excuse, and I think it plays into the hands. I have, and I like to think I'm pretty good at being able to sort of struggle between the two sides of a story and maybe like work out some kind of middle path. This one I have no middle path, and if you carry a gun, I don't know what to do with you. And I think we probably wouldn't be able to have a conversation, because I would never ever be able to get out of my head the fact that you think that your right to carry a gun is greater than the right of somebody to not be shot. It makes me so fucking angry. And it makes me so angry in that way of, it makes me really sad, because it reduces human beings down to like their worst level. And I think we're better. I think we're better than that. I know we're better than that, because I live in a world where when a shooting happens because a civilian has a gun, it is something that is horrifying. It is something that brings a country together. It is something that causes investigations. It isn't something that people then go, and the next item on the news is the weather. And that for me is like, what the fuck is going on? Like, how are you living in a world where that's okay? The unlicensed having, or the right to bear arms, the right for you to carry a handgun, I don't get it. It's ridiculous. It's not ridiculous, because ridiculous things are funny. And ridiculous things are often harmless, and this isn't harmless. It's horrendous. And it's such a fucking disgrace. So that's rant over for this week. I hope you have a really good week. If you're in the UK, then have a lovely bank holiday, and I'll speak to you next week. Bye.